This match was an absolute banger. 5 maps, 99 to 99 round 3. It was insane. But there's also a lot to unpack, so I tried to decipher what the hell happened last weekend. In the first of many VOD reviews, we'll go over the Dallas Fuel versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. We roll out on map 1 with an interesting note here. We have Doha in on Genji instead of Sparkle. Why? Sparkle is probably the best Genji of all time. Well, my personal theory is that Sparkle is a hard carry kind of Genji. We saw the same issue with Proper a bit in the Justice game too. This is a meta where the Genji plays with the support and the Junker Queen to dive targets and take kills with them, knock them off on their own and try to do some insane shit, as that both leave the Genji exposed to be collapsed on, and the main rush without a lot of DPS. Doha may be more suited for that style of play. Another interesting aspect here is that Shu is in on Sojourn over Patafan. My only thought is that Shu and Ans provide a sort of shot calling that Patafan doesn't. I don't think Patafan is amazing at Sojourn, but surely rather than Shu. Shu was decent though, he had some nice shots. Now, round 1 was a pretty clean win for the Gladiators, mainly off the back of some heroics from Reiner and Shu. There was definitely sloppiness here, though Kevster was caught out of position twice and killed first, but overall Reiner, Funny Astro, Skewed were able to play as a squad, moving around the map together and exerting constant pressure on the point, using ultimates proactively to get the jump on them. Good stuff. However, round 2 is where things began to go south for the Gladiators. Doha swaps to Mei. Mei has seen an uptick in use where there are small doors or corridors around the point, where Mei can wall people off as they try to play around it. Doha uses Mei extremely effectively here. He consistently uses it to split off members of the team, especially in the first fight, which is crucial to the teamwork of the Gladiators. This round is messy on both sides. On the Gladiators' part, they play right into the hands of the Fuel, getting insanely split up and simply not having focus fire whatsoever. Oftentimes, the team is just running around the point split up, trying to get a pick or two. It works sometimes when Glad simply out-mechanic the Fuel, resulting in many drawn-out, scrappy fights. But the teamwork really wasn't there this round. Seeing Reiner get a massive 3-man rampage and not getting a single kill because Kevster dies before he even gets it off was painful. But the Fuel also use ults too passively for my liking, and I think that's part of the reason why these fights are much more scrappy, because Fuel never really take the initiative and get the jump on the Glads. That could be due to their new plan playing around Doha's Mei, walling them off, but still. This is also the round where Edison and Hanbin begin to get the better of their counterparts. Round 3 is utter domination though. Doha swaps out back to the Genji and the Fuel more or less dominate. Edison gets good picks. Shu more or less goes silent this round. The Fuel focus fire is insane, especially compared to the Gladiators. Honestly, the only reason the Glads won a fight was due to the Hanbin Doha fucking up their ult in quick succession. Frankly, the focus fire and frankly the DPS of the Glads was just not there as much. There was one fight where Reiner rampages fielded on Hanbin. They get to half health and are in the middle of the Gladiators, and they managed to walk out while killing Skewed and Funny Astro somehow. Like, what the fuck was that? Fuel take round 3 pretty easily, and the map. Next map is a pretty interesting one. Ans comes in for Shu, and Glads roll out with an Echo and Ashe comp. This is different from the Genji and Sojourn one, obviously. Glads have tended towards the Ashe this week, as they likely trust Ans' Ashe over his or Patafan's or Shu's Sojourn for good reason. Ashe also has the plus of using her dynamite to apply constant pressure damage. Nico is different, but I am a fan. Echo's mobility is greatly appreciated, especially in the extremely vertical and open map of Paraiso. I understand why teams tend towards Genji, and its close range pressure fits in better with the rush style. However, the aggression from the rush of the Glads allows Kevster to just flank and wreak havoc. And this is how it goes for the first 2 points, but then they get to point 3 and just fall over. The same fate many teams face. Point 3 is insanely hard to attack, as there are multiple avenues for the defenders to take and control the area, whereas there's only really one way for the attacker to come through. So the Fuel are able to control their aggression, and with their aggression halted, it's easy for Kevster to get sniped by Edison, which happens a lot. And with the DPS being pressured, they can't really get the picks they need to win out a lot of these fights. The Fuel simply out-tempo them, and despite Glads having a decent push eventually, Dallas are able to contest them twice in short spans of time, and Fuel eventually wins out, holding them at point 3. Dallas rolls out of the more traditional comp, but they still wind up rolling past the first few points, with Fuel countering the Glads' aggression phenomenally with controlled tempo and cooldown management. When they do get stopped, the Glads' re-aggression is a bit more flawed. They are more passive than the Fuel were, and tend to back off, which Fuel take advantage of, aggressing despite good picks onto Edison and Doha, and eventually taking the map. They simply outplayed the Gladiators. Gladiators struggled to regain map control after being stopped at point C, where the Fuel were able to push onwards and take back their map control despite getting picked a few times. Made to the next map, which is kind of a mess from the fuel. They're attacking numerous problems. Cloud spawn camped them right at the gate, and that threw them off with multiple members of the fuel isolating themselves and getting picked for no apparent reason. Edison tried to mirror the Ash, but was bullied by Ons and swapped to Sojourn. They were all over the place and somehow took both points by brute forcing with their ultimates. But they get stopped almost immediately at point C. The Clouds come out with on their attack with the same comp as they had in defense. The Dallas defense is, again, extremely messy. Uncoordinated, players get split up and picked off by Kevster and Ons, and they only really dig their heels in at point 3 with a huge 3-minute hold, which they C9 away. Now, why the difference in performance? Well, I think Juggertown is a much more wide open map, and Dallas gets out map control in small areas. That's why they held for so long in Parisio and was able to maintain their aggression despite losing players. Because the Clouds were passive and kept giving up map control. In an open map like this, where Ons can get insane value or the Ash thanks to Edison not really being able to contest them. It was only in that tiny area where they could set up and completely control. They were able to take hold of that game. It is also worth mentioning another player. Kevster goes sicko mode the rest of this series. He got at least 2 kills every fight, it seemed. He's definitely the hard carry, and Dallas were not doing much to shut him down. He totally dipped Doha. We went to map 4, and this one is much more competitive, with it pretty much coming down to Gladiators clutching out the last map. But let's check it out. This is a map that suits Fuel's playstyle much more. Within close space, they can move around as a group, and they did do this very well. They consistently isolated Reiner and the supports and constantly kept the pressure up with picks. But if they played well, how did they lose? Well, for one, Kevster went berserk this map. It seemed like the man refused to go down without a fight, constantly taking picks, even in lost fights, which is actually a huge in push with the respawns were so far away, and it led to the Cloud being able to re-engage more efficiently due to Shio constantly having to taxi someone back to the point. But he has so many first picks, so many phenomenal Dragon Blades, so many good dives. He just did it all, and it offset the fact that Ons and Reiner went dark the whole series. I also think the Gladiators did a much better job applying pressure and getting meterage despite being a man or 2 down. They were simply more clutch when it mattered, and being perturbed by something as meager as being a man down. They simply brute forced many fight wins over the fuel, and the fuel had a hard time keeping up, possibly as a result of them getting careless due to the massive lead they had accrued at the beginning. For other individual performances, Reiner is pretty poor. He had a lot. He was isolated a lot, in a bad position, and was under constant pressure from the fuel that he couldn't match. I also think Shio had a bit of a stinker of a map as well. He must have just beat 2 or 3 times, which led to Kevster being able to just team wipe with the Dragon Blade. This especially happened at the end where they were spawn camping and had to turn around to kill Funny Astro, and Kevster got a 3k and they wound up capping, and he only got the 3k because Kilo used beat to counter a Bob. Pretty big throw. Doha also got greedy. He did pop off a lot and get good value, but for every good moment, there's always a moment where he loses a 1v1 to Kevster or ties no position. Overall, solid yet messy map from both sides somehow. The momentum now on the Glad side, we go to Ilios for a 5th and final map, and both teams roll out with the same comps. Round 1 is scrappy, but goes to the Glads due to their superior map control, really. Few players were a bit greedy. Round 2 fights were lost due to Doha and Hanban having weird positioning, and in this relatively slow comp where team fights last forever, that's a lot of percentage points. And again, Shio's B management is messy. Kevster broke open the point thanks to a Dragon Blade, which had no counter, whereas Doha's was countered with a well-timed beat. I think Shio jumps the gun a bit. I do think Fuel had the advantage in teamwork and capitalizing on mistakes, though. Hanban fucks. The next round was a bit of a roll. The Fuelers were able to work together a lot better, rotate much quicker thanks to better coordination from Hanban and Shio. Doha popped off. Reiner was isolated a lot and took him until overtime in that round to get an ult, which he did use almost solo clutch to fight, to be fair. But in the end, the Fuel just out-tempoed them and rolled. Round 3 was very close and imperfect by both teams. Fuel were a bit overambitious in their rotations, which usually works pretty well as they can't get the jump on them faster, but the Glads were just better prepared this time around. They were unable to break through. However, Fuel played the last fight phenomenally, managing to counter 5 ults from the Glads, which is especially impressive considering Ans take out Doha relatively early thanks to cycling through the command shout and beat to counter the Braid and Reiner's rampage. Great patience and control from the Fuel. That and some weird champ positioning from Skewed and Reiner, and you have a fight win for the Fuel. After that, Fuel just rolled. They played extremely aggressive, splitting up the rotations from the Fuel, the Glads time and time again, and just not letting On set up. They just rolled and took the final round 100-99. What a game. This really was just a hive mind dip from the Fuel. Time and time again, we see Fuel outpace the Gladiators, and the Gladiators just fell back and let the Fuel take space. Frankly, Kevster dragged this team hands and feet to the almost finish line. His unbelievable carries in the second half of the series were really what led the Gladiators to even have a chance at beating the Fuel high mind, despite some over-aggression from him early on. Fuel seemed back in full swing. Other than Kevster, some individual forms I'd like to go over are Doha was great this match, but was a bit feast or famine. He was caught out of position a lot and died early. However, he did get massive blades and just had a lot of value. Unstipped Edison a decent amount. I was surprised Edison was a player of the match. I'd given it to Hunman or Fielder, but whatever. Hunman had a lot of big moments, but what was worse as the series went on, and he died first a lot on the last map. Hunman was unbelievable that series, probably the best Junker Queen we've seen so far. He popped off, had fantastic cooldown management, and synergized with his team very well. His ults were a bit weak, and he was caught out of position a few times, but other than that, he had a flawless run. Reiner, though, had a rough one. I do want to praise his mechanics. He had multiple huge knife hits throughout the series, and had a few pop-off moments, but overall, he wasn't too good. He was isolated and died a lot through the series, and he didn't synergize with Astro very well. I think their strengths are in dive meta, which would make sense as to why this one doesn't suit them very well. But they were also often disjointed. I also don't like the way Reiner used his command shout. He used it reactively a lot. Do you think to save allies? I don't dislike that use of it, but Hanman's use of it as primarily an engaging tool is much better in my opinion. I was also very impressed by Fielder. I actually thought he outperformed Skewed in this match. But overall, I think this match proves that more than anything, that pure star power and pop-offs can't do much in the face of the Heimbind. I think Gladiators showcase better individual mechanics throughout, but Dallas has a much better understanding of the comp and play to their strengths. I'm going to watch other VODs, so stick around if you like these kinds of videos. Thanks for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe for more. I upload really daily Overwatch League content, and I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs by the end of Season 5, so any subscription helps greatly. Thanks.